Good morning, Ms. Forey. This is Mason Bird at the Department of Forensic Science. I wanted to notify you it's 10:31 a.m. and you have a quorum for the meeting of the Scientific Advisory Committee.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you, Chief Deputy Bird. I would like to start off by calling this Scientific Advisory meeting to order. We have a few housekeeping points that I just wanted to go over. Please, everyone speak up so that you can be heard clearly. Also, we are in a virtual meeting, so we have audio visual connections, and make sure that you stay on video during the meeting, and please mute your microphones if you're not speaking, just to prevent any feedback. As of July 1st of 2024, there was a change to the Virginia public meeting laws, which now considers, for the purposes of determining a quorum, that a member is considered absent from any portion of the meeting during which the visual communication with the member is voluntarily disconnected or otherwise fails. In other words, don't turn off your camera. So, also, another little bit of housekeeping. When we make the motions for our meeting today, and also the second, please state your name as well so that we can make sure that we have that on the record clearly. Our first order of business this morning is to adopt the agenda for today's meeting. Have all of the members received a copy of the draft agenda? See a lot of head nodding. Great. Are there any changes that anyone has proposed to today's agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the draft agenda?
So moved, Mark LeBeau.
So I have Mark LeBeau, a second.
George Maha, second.
George Maha, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. That motion passes and the agenda has been adopted. Our next item is approval of the draft minutes from the meeting on April 22nd of 2025. And Ms. Sorokin previously sent us those draft minutes to review. Are there any proposed changes to the minutes? With no amendments, may I have a motion to approve the draft minutes?
Chris Bomarito, so made.
Thank you, Chris. A second?
Rich Myers, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. That motion carries and the meeting minutes have been approved. The next item on our agenda is the chair's report. I do not have one of those. So we will move on to Controlled Substances Subcommittee report. And that meeting was held this morning, October 7th. And I ask Mr. Myers to present that report from this morning's meeting.
Okay, good morning. The Controlled Substances Subcommittee met this morning to consider a method validation entitled the Quantitative Analysis of Cocaine, Heroin, and Methamphetamine using a multi-point calibration curve. It was reviewed by the members of the subcommittee, myself, Dr. LeBeau, and Mr. Bomarito. We discussed that method with the Department of Forensic Science, and we approved the validation.
Thank you. Any questions or comment from the committee? May I have a motion to approve the report from the Controlled Substances Subcommittee?
George Maha, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
Jennifer Bro, second.
Thank you, Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries and that Controlled Substances Subcommittee report is accepted and approved. Next on our agenda is the Toxicology Subcommittee report. That group also met this morning, October 7th, and I asked Dr. LeBeau to present this report to the committee.
All right, thank you. Yes, the committee did meet this morning. We discussed 4 proposed validation plans. One on the addition of novel psychoactive substances to the amphetamines, phentermine, and designer stimulants, quantitation and confirmation by LCMS method. That plan was approved to proceed as written. The second was a validation of volatiles, quantitation and confirmation by Headspace dual column GCFID. That plan was also approved to proceed as written. The third was the utilization of a circulating bath in the amphetamines, phentermine, and designer stimulants quantitation and confirmation by LCMS. That plan was approved to proceed with a slight modification of increasing the number of different samples in the various matrices for the bias and precision studies that will be conducted. And then the last is a plan for validation to add 7 novel benzodiazepines to an existing method. And that plan was also approved to proceed. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Dr. LeBeau. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the report from the Toxicology Subcommittee?
Chris Bomarito, so made.
Thank you, Chris. Second?
Kathy Corrado, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. That motion carries. And that report has been approved. Next on our agenda is the DFS Director's Report. So I ask Director Linda Jackson to present that to the committee. Linda?
Thank you. Hopefully share my screen. Somebody can thumbs up if you can. Okay, thank you. All right. We are excited, as I know that you know, we are really getting close to being able to move into our new building. So it is on schedule for completion by the end of this calendar year. And so we are planning to move in beginning sometime mid-January of 2026. And so we're hoping that we will be given occupancy right at the end of 2025. And so it is, this picture is a group of our folks that got to come and look. And so people are getting excited and people are being trained so that they can go by themselves as they are, for supervisors, so that we can work on, really figuring out the move and where things are going to go and all that kind of stuff. So just a couple of pictures of some of the progress. The firing range is pretty much complete. Up on the upper left is the shielded room for digital evidence, which is a big improvement to what we have now, which is, basically a closet that has been retrofitted to be shielded. And so this is something that has been designed from the beginning. So that's great. And certainly all of the casework and countertops and all that kind of stuff, hoods, it's all being put in there. And we're really starting to see some of the last finishes, that are starting to go in, like carpet squares and that kind of stuff in areas. So We're very excited. And so we have contracted, or we are working to contract with a moving company so that we can, and that will be for things other than the scientific instrumentation. The scientific instrumentation, we are planning to contract with the vendors to take down the instruments appropriately, have them crated, have them moved, and have them kind of rechecked out once they are in the new facility by the vendor before we would do our performance verifications on those instruments. And we are looking to do a phased approach so that, you know, obviously it is too much for everything to move all at once. It's not just us moving, it's also the medical examiner and their, you know, all of their different operations that will need to move. And so we're thinking it'll be probably 4 to 6 weeks, probably more towards the 6 weeks than the 4. So again, we're anticipating that move starting in mid-January, which for me is super busy because the General Assembly starts in mid-January. And so that will be very exciting, but in a crazy kind of way. But anyway, that is the way it goes. And then we will also be working with the Department of Real Estate Services, which is another division within the Department of General Services that we will work with to do the surplusing of our current building. So our current, you know, over where I am is leased space. And so that our lease does end at the end of March of 2026. So we'll need to have all of our stuff certainly out by then. But moving through the process to deal with our state-owned property, which is the Paul B. Ferrara building, the biotech, you know, building where we've had our meetings, is also something that we are working with them to go through the process to surplus, which is where they look for state folks to see if any state folks want it, and then the city of Richmond, and then after that, it could be sold, depending on who is interested in having that lovely building. So we have had some interest from a couple people. We've given some tours, so we'll see what happens with that. So hopefully our next meeting can be at our new facility in April. We have sent out a notice and have started distributing these new DNA collection kits for victims of strangulation. We're calling them neck and fingernails kits. The legislation actually called them trace evidence kits, but obviously that caused confusion from our end because we have a whole section of trace evidence that has nothing to do with DNA, trace DNA evidence. And so we have renamed them more like what they would be sampling. And so these are kits that have been made to be distributed to the hospitals that are doing the medical exams of folks. And so the sampling swabs and so forth that are in these kits, the same ones are in the PERCs, or our physical evidence recovery or sexual assault kits. And so these wouldn't be needed if there was suspected strangulation as part of a normal sexual assault. This would be if there was the thought that there was a strangulation that was separate from that. So this is where we estimated that we thought we would get maybe 10 to 15 additional DNA cases a month from these kits, but we had no real idea. We did that based on the number of strangulation type charges that were in Virginia, but we have yet to get very many of these, but it's very new. We just started sending these out a little after the 1st of July. I've sent out 2 other policy notices, I guess, since we met last, or the most important ones anyway. Did send one out at the beginning of June. That is when we first put our contract in place to send certain cases, the non-persons cases, to a private lab. Our contract is with Bodie, which is in Lorton, Virginia, which is excellent for the fact that they are close. So if their testimony is needed, it cuts down on travel costs. But also we have sent, since this went into place, we've sent 600 cases to Bodie for analysis to try and dig us out of our backlog hole in forensic biology as we've been trying to increase our testing capacity. The other thing that I touched on in this is that we have expanded our use of STR mix, and the reason that it's important for our customers to know that is that will cut down on the number of cases that have to be transferred to the central lab when there is a mixture profile that needs to be that needs the probabilistic modeling, and because we were doing and we will continue to do true allele, but that has only been available in central. And so any case that needed that probabilistic modeling was having to be transferred, which just adds to the time. And then the STR mix also, just the computer time is less. And so hopefully that would also help with turnaround time. So just trying to give our customers some shred of good news that maybe our turnaround times can start to improve with forensic biology. The other notice that I sent a little later in June was related to firearms. And I know that Ms. Lohman spoke a little bit about our firearms in Western at our last meeting, but in Western, we have taken firearms comparisons off of our scope of accreditation because we currently do not have someone who is qualified to perform that in the Western laboratory. And so all of those cases are being transferred. So we wanted to be clear on that. And we also wanted to reiterate the prioritization that we were putting on cases to make sure that we were handling the ones with the highest need, whether it be for court reasons or public safety reasons, ahead of others. So we have a new, in the state of Virginia, we have a new SUDA dashboard, SUDA being the Virginia Substance Use Disorder Analytics website. And this is, we have given the data from seized drugs that we usually give to the NIFLS project for DEA. We have given that same data to the SUDA platform, and it is put together with other information. It's got health systems, it's got law enforcement, which our data would be considered law enforcement because it's from the seized substances. There's treatment data, there's recovery service data, and it's all kind of in there to try and coalesce that data together. So the public health records, that's looking at like overdose death records and emergency department visits, the prescription drug monitoring program, and that kind of thing. And then our data is in there as looking at intelligence for drug seizure records and trend analysis. And so our data from the NIFLS will be put into this system monthly, just like it is for our own seized drug dashboard. And it does require that you, because of the sensitive nature of some of the data in there, it does require that you get access to that, and you have to sign an NDA before you are granted access. So I'm not showing you any of the data in there. This is just, from the public website. So that's just something that's happening in Virginia as a whole. And so we were happy to participate. We have been noticing some concerns with scientist recruitment and retention, and particularly in our northern laboratory. I think at some point we mentioned that our entire northern latent print section resigned to go and work for a federal lab. So that was one supervisor and 2 scientists, which that totally closed down the section. And so we've hired a supervisor internally, someone who has relocated from our Western lab, but the 2 scientist positions have been posted 4 times without being able to be filled, although we have currently some candidates that look promising. But, looking at our pay plan in Northern Virginia, there's only a 5% differential for folks in the Northern lab, which is in Manassas. And so we have worked to do a compensation study so that we could try and evaluate what the salaries should be, particularly, we looked at statewide, but particularly in the Northern Laboratory. And so we did ask for some labs nearby to respond to a salary survey. And this is different than the AskLab one, which currently is out. So any lab directors on this call, you could participate in that. But we looked at the 2023 AskLab survey, but we wanted ones for labs that were close by. And we also wanted to get some information from the federal labs that were nearby. And so the Secret Service lab was one, I think, and they were the ones that took our latent print section. And so we were happy that they then could participate in our salary study, and also the DEA, which has a couple labs close by, participated. And so when we were looking at that, we certainly saw that there was a need. And just as an FYI, looking at the cost of living index, Manassas has a considerably higher cost of living index than any of the other locations where we have laboratories. So looking at the study results, we saw that in the Northern Lab, all of the scientific positions were low, pretty much. Whereas for statewide, looking at the results, it was really only our first level trainee that was low. And then most of the other scientist positions were at or above market. And we do have a program which I know that not all labs have, which is that once someone goes through training and they become a qualified examiner, which depending on the timing of the particular section's training program, is somewhere between 12 and 24 months. That after in the first 4 years of their employment, as they grow in their in their knowledge and in their field, as long as they do show growth, each of those folks gets a 7% raise each year until they get to that fourth level. And so because of that, it's really just the starting salary of the trainee that seemed low statewide, but the rest were at or above market for places other than Northern. So we're in the process of going through the budget request process to see if this is something that we will be allowed to address. So I'll talk about the budget in a little bit, but we are in the process of, this is the year when the outgoing governor puts forward their budget for the next biennium or the next 2 years. And so that is what we are hoping to be included in. One other thing that we have done kind of organizationally is reorganized our director's office and the responsibilities kind of within that. So we created a new director of finance and administration position, which our finance manager, we had a very strong pool, but she was selected for that position. And we moved the grants management, finance management, and procurement out from under Dave Barron as the deputy director, and put those sections underneath the director of finance and administration, so that it's more like a CFO kind of position that reports directly to the agency head. And part of the reason for doing that is just looking at succession planning. When the department was originally formed or elevated in 2005, it is at that point there was a director of finance, and that position was lost a couple of years later in the budget cut process, when there was budget cuts kind of across the state, and all of the functions that were under that director of finance and administration were moved under the deputy director. And so the deputy director, the director of all of the technical services reports to the deputy director. All of the regional lab directors report to the deputy director, and then facilities, IT, grants, finance, procurement, all of that was under the deputy director. And so, looking forward to where some of us one day might retire, we thought that that was really an impossible position for somebody new to come into. And so we wanted to kind of create a better structure to align the functions and responsibilities. We do have one potential piece of legislation that we are hoping will go through the General Assembly in this upcoming session, and that is directly related to you, the Scientific Advisory Committee. The code section for the Scientific Advisory Committee specifies that the committee shall meet twice a year in the city of Richmond. And so that's great. And when our building was in the city of Richmond, but now our building will be in the county of Hanover. And so we are hoping just to take out the specified location in a bill. So hopefully that will be very non-controversial and go through with no issue. So looking at our case statistics, they are available anytime you're interested on our dashboard. But looking at the workload statistics for the previous quarter, which just ended, they're all here in this chart. There are some trends of note that the average case turnarounds for forensic biology did go down this quarter. And so did in digital and multimedia evidence went down. Toxicology has remained very stable. We are still doing some outsourcing of Western as we are bringing some staff online. But this, in general, other than firearms, which is continuing to go up, there are some that are going in the right direction. So budget I had talked about briefly already, but we don't have any positions in our authorized positions or maximum employment limit that are just being held. Pretty much everything is being recruited in some way. We did have a little over $5 million left over at the end of fiscal year 25, which ended on June 30th. Part of that, good chunk of that was from the breath alcohol instruments, which we didn't end up buying in fiscal year 2025. We have now signed the contract for that. It is officially, the purchase order has been developed. And so we should be spending that money in 2026. So we've asked for that to be carried over, which it had already been carried over from the year prior. And so it wasn't part of our base budget anyway. The other big chunk of that was that no state agencies were allowed to do any prepayments for services from state agencies for the next year. And so that meant that our big payment to VITA, our IT, for our IT costs and for rent of some state facilities did not get paid ahead of time. So that is, so for the rest of that, we were hoping to be able to, and we've requested to be able to carry that over, since we don't know what the utility costs are going to be for the new facility. Those utilities will probably be moved over to our name when we get the certificate of occupancy, which hopefully will be at the end of this year. So we'll have half a fiscal year of the higher utilities costs, since it is approximately twice the square footage of the central laboratory as it stands now. And so this was our final budget for the year that we are in now, fiscal year 26. And we did get the 2 additional forensic biology, forensic scientists, the 2 facility specialists to help support the new larger laboratory. And then the 1 senior legal assistant to help with the Mary Jane Burton process that has been filled and reports to Amy Jenkins. And then tomorrow at the board meeting, I will be requesting permission to apply for the 2 block grants that have come out. Obviously, they're much later for those of you that have been tracking the grant funding for forensic, anything forensic related. Everything is very delayed this year. Normally the money, normally this would have happened in the late spring and the money would have become available October 1st. So these have been released and have short turnaround times, and they're hoping that the money will be available as of January 1st, although we'll see how that goes. Our values for what we have been, what is noted for being available to Virginia, and these are block grants, are less than they were in the previous year. The Seaver grant is approximately $175,000 less, and the Coverdell is, I don't know, $30,000 less or something like that. And so anyway, those are the values that, or the grants that we'll be requesting permission to apply for tomorrow. And that is all I was going to share with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Director Jackson. Does the committee have any questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you for presenting that report. And I would like to move on to the the Division of Technical Services updates. So we'll hear 6 reports this morning, and I would like to start by inviting Alka Lohman to give the DTS update.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to share my screen as well. And if you could let me know when you see slides, please. It's not in the right place. I'm going to try that one more time.
That looks great, Alka. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you all today. I will jump right into it for DTS. We have a bunch of information to share today. Maybe I will jump right into it for DTS. Hey, okay. So we had our full reassessment visit just a few weeks ago, September 15th through 19th. We had 26 assessors visit us and they hit the ground running. So they came to each of the laboratories on day 1. And they did finish at some laboratories by Wednesday or Thursday. And by Friday, we had our closing meeting around 2 p.m. Of note, we were the first system to get audited against the FBI's new DNA QAS, so both standards, meaning testing and databasing. So that was very exciting for us. And as usual, our certificates and scopes are on our website. And I've spoken about this before, but just as a reminder, our current accreditation cycle does expire September 30th of 2026. So almost a year from now. However, due to staffing issues with ANAB, as well as our impending move, we did perform a contract modification, and we moved up our full accreditation visit. It would have happened probably in the May of 2026 timeframe for the September expiration, but as I said, it just happened in September. So that will allow us to not also be assessed with 26 folks on site as we're trying to move to the new central lab facility. So I will talk a little bit more about this. And as far as the results of the assessment go, this is just a summary from the assessment report. I believe it was a meeting or two ago, if not more, that Dr. Corrado had previously asked if we could share the results of our assessment in a little more detail. So this is my attempt at doing that. But as you can see that the summary does state that they found that we demonstrated competence to operate a management system that fulfills all applicable accreditation requirements, including those specified within their own management system. This little pie chart that you can see talks about the different objective evidence that's assessed. We were conforming to 184 of the criteria, and we were only non-conforming to 5 of the accreditation criteria. So I'll go into a little more detail about that. And one of the accreditation criteria, which is 5.4 from ISO IEC 17025, talks about the laboratory carrying out activities in a way to meet not only the requirements of the accreditation standard, the requirements of our customer, but other regulatory authorities. And our accrediting body has said that one of those regulatory authorities is the FBI for the NDIS accreditation. So that would include the FBI QAS. So we did have a couple minor instances of non-conforming work when it comes to the FBI QAS. One being there was some lack of conformity, I'll say, to the fact that we have continuing education literature articles that our staff are to read, but a couple individuals did not complete all of the 2024 readings until 2025. So we will make our policy on that a little more specific to say, hey, you're going to complete them within the calendar year. If it's close to the end of the calendar year, you'll have a couple months grace period into 2025 or into the next calendar year, this year being 2025. In addition, there was another criteria from the DNA QAS that was unclear as written. So that is a potential finding that we will in fact appeal to NDIS. There was another finding with respect to 5.5 of the International Accreditation Standard that we would document our procedures to have consistent application within each of our laboratories that conduct that sort of testing. And we do have impressions in 2 of our 4 testing laboratories, but there was some question about the consistency of the application, given that the manual for impressions did not speak to all of the different procedures. But part of the issue on our side was our impressions examiners are all in fact latent examiners within our system, and impressions did evolve out of our latent print discipline. So some of the portions of the latent print manual, which they were using, were not in the impressions manual. So since impressions is its own discipline, we will add those sections to the impression specific manual. We had a couple instances, depending on how it was being used, in controlled substances where the thin layer chromatography original observation was not documented, but instead the result was documented in the examiner's notes. So we will propose some solutions to have all of that in our examination documentation, as is the interpretation of our accrediting body. And then there were a couple findings with respect to reporting, meaning was it clear to our customer how we were reporting our visual observations, and that one was specific to forensic biology, as well as can the method that's being reported be attributed to the specific item, and was it clear to our customer? All of that is available in our examination documentation, which is part of the technical record, but the accrediting body wanted it to be clearer on the report. So we are working towards making that action plan accessible to our lead assessor, and that should happen any day now. We are well within our 30 days to give that action plan to our lead assessor for possible approval and then implementation. Once our lead assessor has accepted our plan and we have implemented it, we would receive the final accreditation decision. And I will happily and hopefully report back to you at the next meeting about that. Other upcoming quality management system activities would include our annual management review, which is set for the end of this month on October 28th and 29th. And another ongoing project that we are working toward would be pre-log. And pre-log is where our customer would go into the pre-log portal and enter in their evidence and the request for laboratory examination. So it's now an electronic RFLE, which currently is paper, carbonless, 5 copies, and that goes around the laboratory with the evidence and demonstrates the chain of custody for that evidence coming into the laboratory and being returned to the customer. So we are very close to launching it. We were hopeful to launch it in September, but given the accreditation and a new revision of a new build of the LIMS system, there were a couple changes that we need to account for. So we are probably just a few weeks away from launching it. But we have already made the adjustments within the Code of Virginia so that we have the evidence submission receipt either by hand or electronic means. So that's how we can capture the signature to demonstrate the chain of custody, which I'll show you in just 1 second. But another thing that we have been informing our customers of is pre-log will create a sequential item number. So it'll start with item number 1, regardless of what the agency calls it. And some agencies have pretty long agency item numbers, as you all may be aware. So this will be a nice thing, but in order to make it easier to identify which item is which, both of the agency item numbers and our sequential item number will be available on the certificate of analysis. So that will give that tie if someone is on the stand and doesn't, so it's all right in front of them when they're testifying. Just of note also is law enforcement does describe the evidence for us. And so we will make adjustments if it's incorrect, or there's a typographical error, as we do now. This is just an example of what the submission receipt will look like. And you can see the signatures and the return receipt, and you can see the signatures. And we containerize our evidence, so that is denoted on both of the receipts. And as you can see, it is the request for laboratory examination. We have also, the pre-log team has generated the training, and that is exciting. We have had a couple of our beta testers who are ready to test, and they are anxious. They've seen these modules. We will release them on a larger scale once we have made the necessary adjustments for these changes that were just deployed last week to the LIMS system. Switching gears a little bit, we have our forensic training section. As a reminder, they are statutorily mandated to conduct the crime scene investigator schools, and they currently do about 3 of those a year. We will move to only 2, most likely in 2026, given the impending move of the central laboratory facilities. But the 115th FSA session graduated on June the 27th of 2025. That also happened to be the 50th session conducted by our forensic training manager, Jeff Dwyer. And so they surprised him with a plaque and a little ceremony that is on the slider of our website as well, if you want to see that. Jeff does not enjoy such accolades. So you can tell from the picture that he was humbled and shy, but his family was there. So it was really a special occasion. We did have the annual retraining for all of the graduates that wanted to attend, and that was the first week of September 2025. And Director Jackson did address the graduates and alumni, as well as we did have presentations from both DFS as well as prosecutors, other crime scene investigators. So it's an excellent ongoing continuing education for those alumni. The 116th Forensic Science Academy session began the same day as our full reassessment visit. So it was hopping in middle of September around the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they are set to graduate on the 14th of November. We do have short courses also that we run because that FSA is a 9-week academy for 12 individuals, and the short courses are open to more individuals. And so that gets them the baseline knowledge as well as some advanced knowledge before coming to the FSA. And so you can see the list of different courses that we have run earlier this year. And we have a few more that we will run before the close of 2025. As always, we like to highlight that our staff are contributing to the forensic science community as a whole. Here are a list of individuals on the different OSAC subcommittees. We have a few in leadership roles as well as chair or vice chair. And again, that list is available to you as well. We are fortunate to have a chemistry research section dedicated to developing and validating methods for the chemistry program area to include controlled substances, trace evidence, and toxicology. You heard updates from both of the controlled substances and toxicology subcommittee earlier. We are fully staffed in the chemistry research section with 8 full-time forensic laboratory specialists. So that is always very exciting. We also have 1 full-time laboratory specialist, 3. The majority of these positions are grant funded, but we do have 3 general fund positions as well. This is a pretty extensive list of the projects that they are working on. And as you can see, they're numerous and cover a variety of different substances and technologies. So again, it is a wonderful thing to have a section that is dedicated to method validation and development. I'm not going to read all of those titles to you, but I'm happy to if you want me to. Otherwise, I will turn this over to the chemistry program manager. I'm going to apologize to her for 1 second because I do have it set in presenter mode, but it is not agreeing with me. And I'm not sure why.
Thank you. Before we move on to Robin, are there any questions or comments for Alka about her presentation? Okay, thank you. And we can also ask the group questions at the end of their presentations as well. So thank you. Robin?
Thank you. Morning, Robin Weimer, Chemistry Program Manager.
We're having a minute of technical difficulty. Please bear with us.
Are you trying? Just look up there. Yeah, but I won't be able to see. Okay. We're going to start with trace evidence, and then at the second half will be controlled substances. Starting with trace evidence and our trainees. We have 3 trainees currently in our central laboratory in trace evidence, 1 in primer residue, expected to complete their training by the end of this year, and another in glass that will also be expected to complete the training by the end of this year. We do have another trainee that's in explosives, and they just started recently, and we expect them to be completed next year in the third quarter. And we have one position in recruit as a result of a resignation. We continue in trace evidence to provide training around the country. So we did a fire debris workshop at the Midwestern Association of Forensic Scientists that was specifically on vegetable oils, fatty acid methyl ester or FAME products, and biofuels. And then we've done a couple of gasoline sufficiency overview presentations. This is about our fire debris grant projects, and then also providing practical tips on implementation. We did one to the ATF and another at the Northeastern Association of Forensic Scientists. And we've also just recently extended our MOU with the Ohio Division of State Fire Marshal. They provide our explosive technical reviews for us currently, while we only have one qualified individual in explosives. That is effective through July of next year, and we will look to extend it again if we are able until we can get our second person online in that third quarter. We do it we've been doing it so that as we re-up or extend the MOU, we provide a technical review proficiency test, and that's got to be completed so that we can extend that MOU. For controlled substances, we have several trainees currently, one in the central laboratory expected to complete their training in July of next year. We had one in Northern that completed their training in July of this year. Another's going to complete their training at the end of this month, and then a third will complete their training in January of 2026. And we currently have one position in recruit as a result of a retirement in Northern. We have no trainees or positions in our Western laboratory that are in recruit currently, and in Eastern, we have one position in recruit. We had our statewide section meeting for controlled substances at the end of July. It was well received, and we covered a lot of territory. We covered DEA's fentanyl signature profiling. We heard from the FDA about counterfeit pharmaceutical identification, internal updates. We provided training on liquid chromatography, got some narcotic canine demonstrations and information, and had a lot more topics that you can see on the slide. This was also supplemented with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Symposium that was held in the beginning of September. 3 days for 3 hours, and they have different themes on each day. So we were able to hear about NPSs, NMR, and early warning systems. These can help us get a better insight into what is happening in other countries. In July, we recommended 7 compounds to the Board of Pharmacy for expedited scheduling. These compounds were considered at the board's September 30th meeting, and we're just waiting on the final approval. During that same meeting, the Board of Pharmacy also considered scheduling that would be consistent with federal action. They evaluated the Federal HALT Act, or the Halt All Lethal Trafficking of Fentanyl Act, and this would effectively schedule what they termed fentanyl-related compounds. So if you look at the compound of fentanyl, which is diagrammed in that picture, each one of the functional groups in different colors, there are specific modifications to those groups that are called out in the legislation. And if that is modified in those particular ways, it would be classified as a fentanyl-related compound and therefore be scheduled. This also was voted on, and we're just waiting on the final approval for this as well. Last week, the annual report for seized drug cases in 2024 was released. We did have a landscape change to seized drugs in 2024, and we saw a decrease in overall submissions. Methamphetamine, however, remained the topmost substance identified in 2024, and you can see that in the second, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it's the second graph at the top, and it pretty much has remained plateaued. Cocaine was the second, and that's to the left of the methamphetamine graph, and it's going on a sinusoidal wave, apparently. We did see increases there, but it remains second behind methamphetamine. For heroin, the third one, we've had several years of decreases, and we did see a 22% increase here. This was the biggest change that we saw last year with regards to percent changes, and we saw decreases in illicit synthetic opioids and prescription opioids. Fentanyl is the highest illicit synthetic opioid, you can see that it's listed third here behind cocaine. And then you can see the rest of how our top 10 rounded out. In addition to hearing Rich Myers talk about the controlled substances subcommittee and our validation, we have a couple other things going on in controlled substances. One, we are making efforts to become more electronic, use less paper. We currently have a paper general drug worksheet that we're moving towards trying to become, to make that more electronic. And we also have a pre-check macro. It's termed pre-check macro, but this really stemmed from a presentation from the 2025 AAFS meeting. There is a word-based macro that can be used. It's optional, and it will evaluate the report prior to giving your case file for technical review. This is not to take the place of a technical review. It's really doing some quick checks to see if there was anything left off of your report that we can quickly check. So things like, are all the administrative statements that you need on the report present? Was your packaging addressed? How about your uncertainty of measurement? Is there a disposition statement on the report? Are your dates of testing present and accurate? What methods were used and are they accurate to how it should be reported? So it's really an optional step that an examiner can take that is specific to our procedures manual and how you can run that macro to see if there's any quick things that you might need to correct prior to technical review. And then we've also just received a new request for mobile instrument evaluation. This is in response to part of our code that allows law enforcement officers to testify in preliminary hearings to the results of the field tests for detection of drugs that have, as long as the field test or the presumptive mobile instrument has been evaluated and approved by the Department of Forensic Science. And so we currently have 2 presumptive mobile instruments that have been approved, and this is seeking approval for a third model of mobile instrument. That is all for me, and I will hand you back to Alka. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those while we are shifting.
Are there any questions or comments for Robin? Thank you so much, Robin.
I know it's a surprise because I am not Ellen Spain, the Forensic Evidence Program Manager, but she is over in our Western laboratory assisting there today. So I have the pleasure of speaking to you a little bit more about our forensic evidence activities. As far as staffing goes, as you can see, we have several positions in recruit. And I believe some offers have been made with respect to the vacancies in Western. And if they haven't been made, they're very close to being made. We do have 1 evidence receiving specialist in training in our Northern laboratory. And we have been working on the progression for those staff. And so there is a new opportunity for career development with the forensic evidence specialist senior position. And we do have 1 staff member in the central laboratory working toward that. Our evidence receiving folks have been very active with engaging with our customers so that if our customers have a better understanding of why we are asking them to do something, we have found that to be extremely helpful. We have had 15 different agencies participate to date, and that has been very well received. They at first don't quite understand, and then they say things like, oh, that makes complete sense. And so then they can take that back to their agency, and it just makes the entire process smoother. As you all know, when there's communication, it can just help get things rolling easier. Ms. Spain is very active with the International Association for Property and Evidence, so we will be hosting the evidence management training course in early December at the Western Laboratory. We have been in the process of updating the evidence handling and laboratory capabilities guides that are available on our website. We recently did the general submission of evidence section as well as the forensic biology evidence section. And we are getting on a schedule for a more routine update of those different portions of the guide. We did conduct evidence submission training for four different agencies. That's kind of hard to say. That was hosted by the Albemarle, which is near Charlottesville, Virginia Police Department, and 11 individuals attended that submission training. And when we can provide training such as that, as you all are aware, when we have an understanding of the policies and procedures, we'll have a more consistent approach. It just decreases the time that our submitters have to spend with us while we're taking that evidence in, and hopefully questions while we are examining that evidence. Further, we have introduced a couple new things within evidence receiving. We have tote bags to protect different auto parts when they're being transferred on our lockbox. We have battery safe cases for the lithium batteries. Our evidence supervisors continue to monitor refrigerator and freezer temperatures within the evidence receiving section. And we will be piloting a health RFID, which uses RFID tags in both evidence receiving in Eastern, and I will not steal Dr. Hutchings' thunder, but it will also happen in toxicology. Before I turn this over to Mr. Jenkins, are there any questions on the evidence receiving portion?
Elsa, before we move forward, we have a request just to take a little break. So we're just going to break until 11:45, if that's okay with everyone. What time is it? How about 11:40? 11:40. Let's take a break until 11:40.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll welcome everybody back to the meeting. Make sure everyone's cameras are turned on from the committee.
Madam Chair, should I share my slides again?
Yes, please.
If I may have a minute at your indulgence, I know you're very much looking forward to the update from Program Manager Jenkins. And it is with I am sad about this, but this will be Brad's final SAC presentation because he is retiring at the end of this year. So I'm thrilled for Bradford, but I am not thrilled for myself, but I am thrilled for Brad. So I will let him take over and I will share the slides again.
That's very sweet of you.
Thank you.
It's going to take a second. I will ask if you can see anything resembling a presentation. I'm going to try that again.
Not just yet. Looks like something's coming up now, though. Yep, I can see that. Thank you.
All right, Brad.
Perfect. Well, Alka, thank you for that. We are really working on the staffing side of the house. So we've had a nice backlog in biology, unfortunately, for years. And so we are been adding staff to try to bring this backlog of cases down. In the Western Lab is where it's our smallest laboratory out in Roanoke. So we have 3 folks in training, and that's where we have our largest amount of backlog cases. And so that group in training, they just started this summer as a group. And we have another scientist in the Eastern Laboratory is heading up the training for them. So she's doing a good job doing that remotely. And this will be about a third of their staff now, with the 3 there will be in training. So we're really trying to expand our operations out in the Western Lab. In Central, we had 3 people in training last week, and 2 folks have completed their training. So we had one scientist in the data bank completed their training, and a scientist in casework completed their training. So we have 1 person in training in the data bank, and then they will be fully staffed. And so they'll be able to work through. There's a small backlog of samples in the data bank. Once they're fully staffed, that they'll be able to take care of those backlog of data bank samples. We are busy trying to hire additional folks, and the Central Lab is getting very tight on space. And so we'll get these additional people here, hopefully before the end of the year. This is a recent recruitment that we're working on. And so we may be sharing spaces, lab spaces and office spaces and cubicle spaces before we get our move to the new lab in January. So things will be a little tight, but we certainly welcome the extra help. In Northern, we have 1 person in training, and their mock trial is scheduled for next month. And so we'll get that one finished up. He's doing really well. Jen, I know you're listening, but they have hired a male in the Northern Laboratory, and I know you don't believe that. We've always had a female contingency up there, but Patrick is doing very well. We have 2 positions in recruit in Northern, and in Eastern Laboratory. It's not often that we have vacancies in the Eastern Lab, but they have a position in recruit in Eastern. I don't believe I was able to talk about this much at our last meeting, but we have our biologists that are now up and running. So we have 4 biologists. We have 4.5 biologists who are working in the Central Laboratory, and they are working on sexual assault kits only. We have cleaned out all of the sexual assault kits in Central, so they are screening those kits. And now we are beginning to take kits from the Western Laboratory. And so we're going to work on the Central kits and the Western laboratory sexual assault kits and try to get those backlogs of those cases down. Northern and Eastern will process their own sexual assault kits for now, but that's progress that we made. That group went online in July, and they've been doing really well. So we're happy about that. Internal training, we are training some more staff members on statistical and kinship training. Dr. Maha started us off with this probably 20 years ago, and we've continued, and now we train those people in-house. And so we have, I believe, 8 more people in training, in relationships training. We do that in all the laboratories. Director Jackson spoke previously that we are bringing more folks online with StarMix. And so the goal is we're going to train the vast majority of our casework examiners in the StarMix, using the StarMix software for mixture interpretation. We have 3 staff members in mitochondrial DNA. We're going to hold off on training them in StarMix since they're doing mostly body IDs with mitochondrial DNA testing. And so we'll hold off on them for a while. But at the end of this year, this will mark all of the examiner staff having training, other than the people in mitochondrial DNA having training in StarMix. We have scheduled another class, and I believe it's coming up in March of 2026. So we have some new hires that you saw on that first slide. And so the idea is that those people will be going through the StarMix training in early 2026. And I think going forward, that'll be the idea, is that we'll have one online training session a year, and we'll put new people into that training session for StarMix. But some of the older folks that have been testing this for a while may need some refresher training. And so we can occupy those other seats in the class for the refresher training. Each class size is limited to 25 individuals. We're making progress on the validation. We have a i5 robots, the Biomech i5s, in all of the laboratories. We recently purchased some additional i5s. We have 2 i5s in all of the laboratories. And so we have some backup systems in case one of the robotics system goes down. Dr. Greenspoon is just about done with our validation here. And then we will reach out to the regional labs to have them begin their validation and their performance checks and training of their staff on the i5s. This will be something that we go live with in 2026. We are switching thermocyclers. The casework will be working on the VertiPro, and that is almost done. And then mitochondrial DNA will be working on the ProFlex, and they're still giving some more work with that. So the VertiPro validation will be actually going to the Scientific Advisory Committee subcommittee, biology subcommittee, for our next meeting. And so Beth and I are reviewing the validation now, and we should have that available soon that we can send out before the end of the year for our next meeting of the Scientific Advisory Committee. All looks very straightforward with the thermocyclers. The TrueAllele and StarMix softwares are all working the same with the old thermocyclers versus the new thermocyclers, so it doesn't warrant additional validation of those interpretation systems, which we are happy about. Linda, Director Jackson spoke briefly of the outsourcing project. And so we are sending the lesser crimes to Bodie to be processed. And most of these are coming out of our Western lab. And so again, I mentioned we have our biggest backlogs in Western, so we're trying to move those cases out. And a lot of them are coming out with this outsourcing project. We have 3 years under this contract, and so we'll be sending at least 600 cases a year to be outsourced. We're seeing if we have additional funding to send additional cases. And so that's one thing the director's office is working on now. If we have the funding, we may send an additional 200 to 300 cases to the contract lab for processing. Some of the data has already come back to us, and so we're working on our first batch of cases to issue reports on. And since a lot of these are Western cases, we're going to kind of share that caseload across the state. And so Northern examiners and Central examiners and the Eastern examiners will help to issue reports on those contracted cases. Our continuing education, we had our continuing education for 2025 was completed. That was the MAFS meeting. It was in the spring. But what a great time to have a new laboratory and a new program manager to set up the 2026 training in Hanover County. So I'm sure the staff will look forward to that. I will look forward to being retired.
Yeah.
Rapid DNA instruments, we are still working on this. If you recall, there are two instruments in the state. We have State Police and Fairfax. And State Police has the Andy instrument. Fairfax has the Thermo Fisher instrument. What we did recently is I took the CODIS, our state CODIS administrator with me. We went to the division headquarters up in Culpeper. And State Police has decided they would like that site to be our first partner agency site. And so Lee and I spent the day there seeing how they aligned with our quality system and working through what is needed to bring them under our accreditation umbrella. And so we had a good trip up there. We continue to also look at making a copy of our state database. And so that might be a slightly different approach, and a number of the states have already done this, but we're also continuing to look at that to see what that costs and what those benefits are compared to bringing them under our accreditation umbrella. That is it for me. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions or comments for Brad? All right, let's move on to the physical evidence program update with Samantha Glass.
Okay. Good morning. Well, you've heard a lot about people in positions today, so I'm here to tell you a little bit more. In the latent part of my world, we have two of the northern positions are in recruit. Interviews were recently completed. Paperwork is being compiled to be sent to HR. However, the belief is that both of those individuals will be offered employment with us. Currently, Layton's has one examiner position as a trainee in Central. It's expected to complete the end of this month or early next month. And one in our Western laboratory is expected to be completed in the middle of next year. So we're excited to have those people coming on. As far as education, all of the impressions examiners attended the IAI annual educational conference, which was held in Orlando, Florida this past July as their section meeting. That was additionally attended by 4 members who are solely latent examiners. Recently, we have had virtual training on our CSI PICS Case to APHIS software. There were 2 sessions, one at the very end of September, one in October, and this will be a replacement software for our latent sleuth. It's another tool for orientation and searching capabilities for the examiners. Additionally, we are planning some virtual teachbacks for some of the other various regional IAI and other meetings that the examiners have attended so that all across the board can find out what information was shared. If we jump to the firearms side of the house with the 2-year training program, this is a little bit longer and sometimes the length of time is a little more difficult to get people through. We have 3 currently in the central the central laboratory for examiners, and those are in recruit. We had received verbal commitments from all 3, written commitments from 2 of the 3. However, the 3rd rescinded on their verbal offer yesterday. So that one will be going back up for posting shortly, but the other 2 are currently in background. And if all goes well, we hope to have them on before the end of the year. Of the other examiner trainees, we have one for Central who is expected to be done probably January. We have 4 in Eastern. We're all spread over the calendars, a couple maybe by the end of the year, couple maybe first quarter of next year. And we have 2 FS NIBIN positions in Eastern as well. They begin their training in April and May and should be expected to be complete and online very shortly. And we'd also like to congratulate our one NIBIN forensic scientist in the Central Lab who completing her training in June and has hit the ground running. She's been a great addition. Upcoming in 2 weeks, the firearms section will be gathering in our Northern Laboratory for our annual section meeting. The first afternoon will be a DISC assessment provided by a group from VCU. It's all about how people like to receive and convey information. So emphasis on communication styles, which should be very helpful to that group as they're all working more and more together as cases are being spread across the state. So just giving them chances to have some face-to-face interaction with people they don't get to see on a daily basis. Day 2 will be a full 8-hour armorer's course, allowing some more hands-on taking guns apart, putting them back together and discussing, modifications and things that they might need to look out for in their exams. They will be provided some updates from AFTI conferences and some virtual AFTI forums that people have gone to and other additional topics in the field. Some NIBIN statistics for you. As of earlier last month, there were 276 new NIBIN potential associations across the state. However, that's a pretty big number when you consider that only 13 of those have been confirmed this year. But overall, we've had almost 4,000 since 2002. The ATF provided us some statistics on the acquisition side at the end of the fiscal year. So the systems that we've had obviously in position longer have more, but it's nice to see those numbers continue to climb. It is slowing down somewhat due to this piece of information. More and more agencies are deciding to start NIBIN sites at their own locations. We recently were notified that Lynchburg and Roanoke PD both added sites at their laboratories, which brings us to 20 in Virginia as a whole and 21 if you include the FBI laboratory. One exciting thing that we are looking into is to get a 3D virtual microscopy instrument in here for comparisons. We've been talking about this for over a year and going back and forth with some potential vendors, as well as our procurement section. We had bid requests put out recently last month, and they will actually close tomorrow. So we're excited to have those sealed bids released to procurement, and we will find out what the next steps are from that. And the last of my umbrella is the Digital and Multimedia Group. They are currently fully staffed with all of their examiners. Their 2 newest examiners are in the 3rd month of their sub-discipline training. However, because they are also caseworking examiners at the time, their training is going to be a little bit extended. One is handling more of the computer device examinations, and the other is focusing on video and image exams. And their expected completions Q1 and Q2 next year, provided nothing changes with their cases. They had posted for the wage FLS position. This was the person who was doing a lot of their triaging and getting their evidence in and plugged in so that the examiners could focus more on the acquisition and extractions. They received 34 applications and are pending interviews for next week. Some of their big projects in addition to their casework is they're spending time working with our IT section and VITA overall regarding cloud-based options for long-term offsite storage of our electronic case files, mostly because of the concerns of how long the physical media that we currently keep in the case files will last, because we have to maintain our files for 75 years. And as you know, technology moves faster than that, so the current storage may not be the best storage in the long run. They have also seen an uptick in mobile device submissions that are requiring more complex repair before they can even begin some of the analysis. So I don't know if that's because people are thinking maybe if I break it, they won't be able to get the information off of it or what, but they have made that note. And then completely conversely, on the analog side of the house, they're starting to get more requests for things on videotape. So they've been trying to find sources for repair and maintenance of video reset recorders. So it's just an interesting trend there. And that is all I have for you today.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Great. And
Thank
move
you.
forward to toxicology.
Thank you. Good morning, Jim Hutchings, the Toxicology Program Manager. So just some brief updates on methodology. You already saw a large list from our Chem Research section, which develops and validates most of our methods. A couple of high points, the nitazines, we're working on implementing that across all of our laboratories. That's utilizing our time of flight mass spectrometry. A couple of high points in progress, miscellaneous base drugs, we're looking to add more targets and utilize our automation. The novel psychoactive substances that Dr. LeBeau mentioned, we're updating that method target list. The blood alcohol, that's a big NIJ grant from our chemistry research section where we're redeveloping and validating a lot of the parameters associated with that analysis, and also expanding our scope of testing by looking more at hallucinogens like psilocybin, LSD, and DMT. As far as staffing goes, we don't have very many vacancies. We just have a forensic scientist and a forensic laboratory specialist in our Western lab. Those ones are towards the end of recruitment, looking to get offers out to the candidates. Breath alcohol, we have no vacancies. And as far as trainees go, we do have 2 forensic toxicologists in our central lab, 1 forensic toxicologist in the Roanoke lab, a forensic scientist in the Western, Eastern, and Northern lab, and a couple of forensic laboratory specialists in the Eastern and Northern labs. One that's not indicated on there is in breath alcohol. We do have a trainee currently in progress. As far as the grants go, we were awarded the DMV Highway Safety Office grants for breath alcohol, which allows us to continue offering licensing and training, and also to retain 1 forensic scientist, and allows us to also maintain our mobile access and electronic processes. And toxicology does help us retain 8 employees across the section, 2 part-time FLS 2s and 6 FLS 2-3s across the section. As Elka had mentioned, we are looking at RFID in toxicology. This is a new program we're going to pilot in our Norfolk lab. The idea being that we would use RFID-based labels to track our custody of our toxicology evidence. So the current process, it's paper-based. We just fill out a paper that says I remove these from evidence custody at this date and time, and I return them at this date and time. Within our LIMS system, once evidence is in the toxicology section, it appears just as tox administrative custody. This process, utilizing the RFID tags, will blend the RFID scanning technology with the LIMS system so that we can then track personal custody within the section through our LIMS system. Looking at some of our toxicology stats across the last few years, looking like we're pretty well steady, some ups and downs, but with the OCME data, again, we're outsourcing some of our cases from our Western laboratories. There could be a slight decrease in the numbers due to that. Breath alcohol statistics, looking at the last few years, as you can noted probably in previous meetings, the dip with COVID in the 2020 year, we have creeped up a little bit since then. It looks like we're steadying out and looks like we're on track to have a very similar 2025 as 2024. And then one slide that probably has looked the same the last couple of meetings, but now is actually different, is that our contract was executed on October 3rd for our new Draeger Elka-Test 9510. So we're working on, again, developing training to be able to provide it to our law enforcement for them to be licensed to utilize the Elka-Test 9510, but also to provide training to our attorneys and judges throughout the state, both prosecution and defense, so that they have a better understanding of this science and methodology that we're going to utilize with this instrumentation. And that's it for toxicology and tech services. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? I'm looking forward to seeing how that RFID pilot project works out. That looks interesting. Before we move on to old business, I just want to take a moment to recognize Brad Jenkins and thank him for everything that he has done and all of his wonderful presentations and leading the biology section. Thank you, Brad, and I'm sure everyone agrees with me that you're very much appreciated, and we wish you well in your retirement. Okay, moving on to old business. We'll start off, I'd like to invite Dr. Christina Barnes Arrington. She'll provide an overview of the Mary Jane Burton project. Dr. Arrington?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, and we can see your slides. It's just not in presentation mode just yet.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This morning, I'm going to provide you with a brief update on the status of the Mary Jane Burton project. As you recall, budget language was passed in 2024 directing the Crime Commission to determine the scope of Ms. Burton's cases. This budget language specifically directs the Crime Commission to identify 3 matters relating to Ms. Burton's work at DFS. First, the total number of cases worked by Ms. Burton that include at least 1 named suspect. Second, the total number of named suspects convicted of an offense in a case worked by Ms. Burton, and whether those individuals are now incarcerated, under DOC supervision, deceased, or were executed. And third, the total number of cases where Ms. Burton testified in court. And here's a visual of our current status of work on the budget language, which has again changed significantly since we last presented to you in April. So taking a quick walk through this chart, beginning with the red box, staff has identified over 7,500 unique cases where Ms. Burton was the forensic examiner. This red box is then divided into the 2 dark blue boxes beneath it, with the box on the left representing the approximately 3,900 cases where no named suspect has yet been identified, while the box on the right represents the 3,645 cases where at least 1 named suspect has been identified. Looking closer at the cases with a named suspect, a total of 4,739 named suspects have been identified across these cases. And remember that this figure does not represent the number of unique individuals, as a single person can be a named suspect in multiple cases. And then moving down to the green boxes, these figures represent the conviction status of the 4,739 named suspects. And thus far, staff has confirmed 1,172 convictions and 892 non-convictions. The remaining 2,600 named suspects still need to have their conviction status determined. Finally, the orange boxes on the bottom focus on the 1,172 named suspects who we know were convicted thus far. But unlike above, the figures in the orange boxes do represent unique individuals. And as of today, we know the status of around half of these individuals who were convicted, with 106 unique individuals who are currently incarcerated, 54 who are under DOC supervision, 406 who are deceased, 8 who are executed, and 11 who were exonerated. Now on to the status of our case file review at DFS. When we last presented to you in April, we had reviewed 36% of all MJB cases. Now we are pleased to report that we have completed reviewing 68% of all known cases worked by Ms. Burton. So that's over 5,100 cases reviewed and cross-validated. And during the course of this case review, we've thus far identified 185 cases with indication of testimony by Ms. Burton. And notably, we have found an additional 550 named suspects from either existing named suspect cases or from finding a named suspect or suspects in cases initially classified as no named suspect cases. And this is important as these additional named suspects add to our workload of verifying whether or not each was convicted. So that leaves us with about 2,400 remaining cases to review, which we're waiting on the State Library of Virginia to retrieve and deliver to DFS. So with around a third of the cases remaining, we can anticipate that the figures seen in the previous slide's chart will continue to change as the case file is finalized. To conclude, we just wanted to provide an update on the 2025 legislation, which directs the Crime Commission to designate a panel to review the estimated 300 cases where Ms. Burton was either one, the forensic examiner, and the case resulted in a conviction of an individual, and that individual is now incarcerated, exonerated, or was executed, or two, where Ms. Burton testified in court, regardless of the final disposition for the defendants in those cases. The review panel will consist of the following representatives who will evaluate the accuracy of Ms. Burton's testing, analysis, and testimony, and will determine, if possible, whether she engaged in a pattern of misconduct. And at this point in time, the chair of the Crime Commission, Delegate Herring, has appointed a subcommittee to assist with this panel process. The next Crime Commission meetings are scheduled for November and December of this year, and while the agendas are still being finalized, an update on this project may be provided at one of these meetings, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on them. Thank you for your time and attention. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Arrington. Does the committee have any questions or comments on, for Dr. Arrington or about the project? It's a tremendous amount of work. Thank you. I invite Amy Jenkins to speak.
Good morning. I just wanted to bring you up to date on our effort to notify those convicted individuals of the review and provide them with information on the review if they desired. We've also been focusing significantly on the incarcerated individuals that are affected by Ms. Burton's work. So as Dr. Arrington pointed out, they have been working through the files here at DFS, and we have been reviewing files behind them, specifically focused on the ones where we have conviction information already established and getting notifications out to those individuals. Back in April, when I spoke with you, we had sent about 237 notices. We have now sent 448 notices to affected individuals. We've also been working through to determine if we can determine if someone is deceased or if we have enough PII to be able to locate them. Some of these individuals were not going to have enough PII to be able to locate them, so we're making the best efforts there that we have, but we are going to have some unable to locate individuals. We've also been, if a letter has been returned because the address that we initially utilized was not effective, we have been resending those letters to a second address as we're able to identify those. Director Jackson spoke about the fact that we had filled the senior legal assistant position. We've hired a wonderful individual named Heather Ford, who comes to us from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and she is a really good sleuth, and she is able to locate addresses and resend those letters, and she's hit the ground running on the project, which has been a great assistance to me. We've also been focused on scanning files of the incarcerated individuals so that we can turn those files over to the Virginia State Crime Commission, and they can disseminate those files to the coalition of attorneys that have agreed to represent those individuals. We just got a finalized list from Dr. Arrington of those, and we are going to finalize our scans and provide those to the Crime Commission so that they can disseminate that information as needed. So we're moving along quite well. Hopefully we can get notifications out to as many individuals as we possibly can between now and your April meeting, and we'll let you know the update at that point in time. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. That concludes old business. We will move forward to new business, and I invite Chief Deputy Mason Byrd to provide the annual review of the electronic meeting policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a little statutorily required housekeeping. We're very grateful to the General Assembly. They allow us to meet virtually, which is a tremendous advantage to all of you and to us. But part of that statute requires us on an annual basis to adopt a policy allowing that to happen, and that policy needs to be consistent with the statute. Last year at this time, you very slightly amended the policy that was previously in effect, and you adopted it. And there are no statutory changes this year that need any amendments to our policy. So that would require us just merely to readopt the existing policy this year. So that would be the recommendation of staff. It seems to be working well. And that would be the motion that we'd be seeking, is to readopt the current electronic meeting policy in its current form.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions or comments about the policy? Okay, we will need to take a vote to readopt that policy. So is there a motion to readopt the policy in its existing form as described by Chief Deputy Byrd?
Kathy
George
Corrado,
Maha,
so
so-
moved.
Okay, I think I heard Kathy make the motion. Is there a second?
George Maha will second.
George Maha, second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries, and we will readopt that policy for the electronic meetings. Thank you. Next on the agenda, I will just give a brief overview of ISO 21043. There is an actual webinar. It happens to be this week on Thursday with ASCLD, the American Society of Crime Lab Directors Training and Education Committee, is hosting a webinar that will be presented by the leadership of the United States Technical Advisory Group on this. So for more details about the standards, you could join that. I think it's registrations on the ASCLD website. But basically, ISO, the International Organization of Standardization, formed a technical committee for forensic science, probably, I think, 2011-ish. It's called TC 272. There are about 23 countries, give or take, that participate on this committee. The scope of and mission of the committee is to develop ISO standards that are related to forensic science. The U.S. is represented at ISO via ANSI, and there are 12 organizations that have members that participate in the technical advisory group developing the position of the U.S. as we develop these standards. ISO 21043 was developed in 5 parts. It is the standard that encompasses the forensic process. The part 1 is terms and definitions. That's available for free online on the ISO online browsing platform. And the other parts 2, 3, 4, and 5 are available for a fee through ANSI. Part 2 was published in 2018. That is recognition and collection of evidence, essentially, and that is on the OSAC registry. Parts 3, 4, and 5 were published in July, over the summer. And that is part 3 is analysis, part 4 is interpretation, and part 5 is reporting. These are consensus standards, so they are the consensus of 23 countries. So they are governing the forensic process from collection with some quality aspects of it, but all the way through to reporting, including testimony. That is something that the U.S. advocated for, that be included. This is not a conformance standard, which means that it is not something that would be used as an accreditation standard the way that 17025 or 17020 are. ISO has a lot of rules and regulations about what is appropriate for assessment conformance type of standards, as does ILAC, which kind of approves what our accrediting bodies in the U.S. can use for those types of standards. I cannot speak on behalf of either accrediting body that the forensics community uses in the U.S. about how this will impact accreditation. For now, these are best practice guideline documents that, again, cover the entirety of the forensic process. My personal opinion is that most agencies who are accredited in 17025 or 17020 will be able to meet the requirements and recommendations in these standards. The only standard that might have a little bit of a different approach is interpretation, primarily because of our colleagues in Europe incorporated some of their approaches to interpretation of data and observations into that standard. But are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Move forward. I don't believe we have members of the public with us today. Do we? I don't think so. Do we have any? So do we have any comments that maybe were submitted electronically? I'll ask Chief Deputy Byrd if that's the case.
We do not, to my knowledge, but if there are any members of the public that perhaps joined, speak now and let us know or raise your hand.
Yeah, they would have to raise their hand.
Yes, they would, because they'd be muted.
I don't see any questions coming from the public.
Excellent, thank you. So next up, we're going to determine our future meeting dates for 2026. There are 2 dates that have been proposed. The April meeting will be in person somewhere in Virginia. Hopefully it'll be at the new laboratory. That would be wonderful. And then the other will be another virtual meeting in October. Does anybody have any conflicts or concerns with the proposed dates? Okay, so let's move forward with those. Make a note on your calendar, and of course, we'll get all the information that we need beforehand. Okay. Moving forward, is there a motion to adjourn? We have finished our agenda. Does everyone want to stay?
So
Rich
moved.
Myers.
I think I heard Richard Myers. Is there a second?
Mark LeBeau,
Second.
second.
Mark LeBeau, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all for participating in a very successful meeting. I look forward to seeing you all in April, and enjoy your day.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.